I'm sorry, I had
Okay.
to take the dog out.
All right, you are live.
All right, thank you. Welcome everyone this evening to East Lansing Study Committee on Independent Police Oversight Commission meeting. It is Monday at 6 p.m., May 24th, 2021. And thank you all for joining us at home as well. Can we go ahead and go into roll call, please?
Kathy Boyle.
Kathy Boyle, attending virtually from my home in East Lansing, County, Michigan.
Sade Colwood.
Sade Colwood, attending virtually from Douglas, Massachusetts, Worcester County.
Noel. Chuck Grigsby.
I am attending virtually from Ingham County, East Lansing, Michigan.
Cedric Harrow.
Cedric Harrow, attending virtually from Mason, Michigan, Ingham County.
Helen Josephson. Chris Root.
Present, attending from East Lansing, Ingham County.
Quentin Tyler. Eric Williams.
Eric Williams, I'm here, East Lansing, Ingham County.
Ron Bacon.
Present, attending virtually, East Lansing, Michigan, Clinton County.
We've been notified that Kelly Ellsworth Atchison will be late and that Noel Garcia Jr. will be coming in at a different time.
Thank you. Are we still at quorum numbers? We're good to go? Okay. I just want to double check. I think we lost someone. All right. Okay. We'll go ahead and acknowledge Commissioner Tyler. He's getting in right now real quick before we move on.
Quentin, you want to go ahead and say that you're attending virtually?
Yes, Quentin Tyler, attending virtually from Lexington, Kentucky.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And again, thank you all for joining us this evening. We are on item 1.2, approval of the agenda, which is 5/24/21. If there's no discussion or amendments or changes, I'll look for a motion to approve. Moved by Commissioner Harrow. Is there a second? Seconded by Vice Chair Root. Is there still any discussion that comes up? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Is there anyone opposed? All right, so moved. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item 1.3, approval of the minutes, which is for 5/10/2021. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Moved by Vice Chair Root. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Callwood. Is there any discussion on the minutes of 5/10/21? All those in favor, please say aye. Is there anyone opposed? All right, so moved unanimously. All right, we will get down to written communications, item 1.4. And this written communication was originally sent to, I believe, council. Is there a response to this written communication by chance, city manager or Councilmember Bacon or anything like that? Do you guys have anything to address to this at all?
Sorry, I was reading that email and catching up on something else. Please, you want to repeat that, Chair?
We got written communication that was addressed to council and staff, and I was just curious if you guys wanted to comment on it or not. It was just based a question about a FOIL process and kind of really the frustration of a community member within that. So I wanted to just kind of see if that was something you wanted to address, or we can just go ahead and move on, unless anyone else wanted to address it as well.
I'd have to have a minute to catch up and look at it, so you have to give me a minute.
No worries.
Same here.
I would just say this quickly because we get about, I don't know if it's 250 FOIAs a year through the clerk's office, probably the same amount or more in the police department. We process them all. I think the clerk does a great job processing FOIAs. If there's anything that's complicated, appeals and so on, the scope of it, we consult with our attorney who's an expert and we get guidance from her on how to respond. So generally, I would say I'm comfortable with our response regarding FOIAs and the processes to disclose. We do that and we disclose a tremendous amount of information. So any particular FOIA response, I would say that it's been in consultation with our attorneys and it's following the FOIA law.
I appreciate that, City Manager. I just had a quick follow-up. So how many did you say you get a year roughly?
Between 200 and 300 a year to the clerk's office. I think we're on target to exceed the normal amount. I think it was 225 or 230 last year. And that's in the clerk's office alone. The police get an order more of that as well separately.
Wow, I didn't realize that was the number. And for the people who are responsible for, you know, this information, is it one or two people that are pretty much in that process, or, you know, how do you feel about that demand and maybe your staffing?
There's a FOIA coordinator and the clerk's department basically runs the FOIAs. They take the information, process it, put it into the systems, produce the letters. Then they send it out to the employees that are impacted by them and ask them to gather the information by certain dates. And then the employees have to go through their files, go through their paper, go through their email, produce that information, get it back to the clerk's office. If there's questions, the clerk works with, or staff work with the attorney to verify what should be disclosed, what shouldn't, what's the scope of it. And then the information is provided from the clerk's office.
I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Is there any other questions in regards to written communication for item 1.4 from anyone else? Any follow-up comments? All right. I'll go ahead and move on to item 1.5. Justin, do we have anyone on the line by chance?
We do have one attendee.
Okay. All right. So pursuant to MCL 15263 subsection 1, limiting public comment to 5 minutes per individual for today's electronic meeting, is there a motion to approve that? Moved by Commissioner Boyle. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Tyler. Is there any discussion in regards to the 5 minute per individual for tonight's meeting? All right, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed to the 5 minute rule? All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and open the lineup whenever you're ready, Justin.
All right, I just need to go down the list. Jace Harper, if you'd like to address the committee, you may do so now. If not, you could simply say pass.
Pass.
All right, thank you. Okay, that's the list.
All right, that didn't take very long at all. All right, so we'll move on to item 3.1, review and approve memorandum and recommended ordinance that we have here listed. And the first line item there is our overall recommendation ordinance. So I know that we were trying to hold off for one of our commissioners who's coming in a little bit late, but I don't think we can hold off for more than the minutes that we have until we think that she is going to be available. So we'll probably have to, well, I guess maybe I should ask, see if there's any discussion or comments or responses back from anyone on the call here to what we have as far as what we're submitting for our recommendation.
I
Yes,
beg your
Vice Chair
pardon?
Root?
I think it might be helpful for Eric and or Kathy to explain a little bit about the memo. Because we're talking about the recommendations and the memo, you know, in this one agenda item.
Eric, you or me?
You first.
All right. Well, what this legal memorandum is, we took the comments from both the attorneys that the committee had reviewed last meeting, excuse me. We took our notes from that meeting and the draft minutes. So we had everybody's comments, and we worked together, although Eric really did yeoman's work on this. A lot of the word processing, which I'm lousy at, he did, and it's a lot of work. So I really appreciate his efforts. We worked together to respond to each of the attorneys' comments that we felt needed a response. And that's what is in this document entitled Legal Memorandum. And after doing that, there were some changes that we felt would be beneficial to the draft ordinance. Those changes are noted in the memorandum, and Eric has then completed updated draft ordinance, which is also in the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle. Please go ahead, Commissioner Williams.
I'm trying to figure out a way to say this that doesn't take me into the weeds. But the major change that we made has to do with getting information from the police department and giving it out to the public. And it has to do with the non-use of the Freedom of Information Act. There was a disagreement between me and Kathy versus the lawyers who are representing the city about whether the police department could invoke the exemptions in the FOIA. And we never, I think, resolved that disagreement, but we did change the language of the proposed ordinance. So there's a change in the language of the proposed ordinance around that. And if I could summarize it generally, it's that there may be some compelling reasons not to transfer information from the police department to the commission or from the commission to the public. Let's say, for example, the home address of a police officer. And we use the word compelling to characterize that. And if the police department has a compelling reason not to give up information, they can stand pat, not give up the information. If the commission disagrees with that, they can appeal that to the city council. And the ultimate issue is whether there's a compelling reason not to disclose that information. So we're kind of loading everything on that word compelling. We're not using FOIA exemptions. We're asking the police department whether there's a compelling reason not to give us information. If the public asks us, the commission, for information, if we have a compelling reason not to give it up, and I think nobody would question that, like the telephone number of a police officer would qualify, then we wouldn't give it up. So that's the change that we put into the next draft of the ordinance. It would be in sections 21, 22, and 24, I believe. And that is basically it. I would say that's the major. There were some little minor quibbles that they had with the ordinance, but I think that's the major one.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Please go ahead, Commissioner Boyle.
Yes, I would agree with what Eric said, and we made it clear. We wanted the ordinance to be clear that the committee does not have to file FOIA requests to get information. But our other concern was the use of what are often called discretionary exemptions under the FOIA, which says a public body may choose to not disclose certain categories of information. And because we wanted the committee to be able to get as much information as it felt would help it do its duties, we didn't want those discretionary exemptions generally used. And the resolution we came to deal with that was to say that the police department has to disclose the information unless there's a compelling reason not to. And if they choose to identify that and notify us that they're not going to disclose information because they believe there's a compelling reason not to, the committee could then appeal that decision to council. So there would be a second look at the situation. And I think our hope is that that would both make sure the committee gets the information it needs, but also have the police department understand that there wouldn't be a whole hog disclosure of information that normally would not be disclosed, like people's cell numbers and addresses and who's going to be notified if there's an accident and all those sorts of information that the committee wouldn't need and probably wouldn't ask for, but that there's no reason to disclose it, and there are compelling reasons to choose not to disclose it. The other changes we made, I think of note, were to the mediation section. We did do our best to try and clarify that section so it was more understandable, because it appeared to us that the attorney, at least one of the attorneys who reviewed it, and maybe both of them, had problems with our language. So we tried to clarify it and make it more understandable. Other than that, most of the changes that were made had to do with using the most appropriate language to describe individuals that encounter the police under difficult circumstances, like those who appear to be suffering from mental illness, those who are without a home, that sort of thing. Those things have been changed in response to suggestions from the attorneys.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle. Does that wrap up, Commissioner Williams, Commissioner Boyle, your supporter memorandum to the ordinance? And did anyone else have any follow-up questions in regards to the supportive memorandum in response to that ordinance that we were doing, or that they were doing for discussion tonight? Yes, Vice Chair Root.
I just want to express appreciation to Kathy and Eric for working through these information access issues and coming to a process that they both think is sound. There was lively discussion at our last meeting, which I think was productive. And I'm really glad that you could keep working on it to come to a way forward that you both are comfortable with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Root. And I will second that. I had asked to be a part of that process with Commissioner Boyle and Commissioner Williams, and I was not engaged in the work at all. I was a witness to it, and the detail and the amount of work that was done. So I'm very appreciative, along with what Vice Chair Root has said, with really helping us through this section here. I don't know where we'd be without your expertise and your time in on this specifically. So I just want to say individually, thank you on getting some of that work done there for us here to get to where we're at, to complement everything else that's been done for us overall. So anyone else? All right, I just want to really make sure I give people ample time to process, because we will be hopefully in a situation where we'll be moving forward with this. So I just want to make sure that if there's any lingering things that are out there, that we have this opportunity to really maybe ask that question or whatnot. So I just want to make sure that we're good to go. And then I will need for someone to make a decision about what we want to do with this item overall. Yes, Commissioner Williams.
Are you talking about this legal memorandum? Or,
yes,
or the whole thing?
I'm talking about the whole thing, and I'm addressing the memorandum work, but I'm talking about the whole thing, and also people really addressing any questions about the memorandum work or any questions about the overall recommendation of the ordinance.
I say this with trepidation, but can I make one final suggestion?
You're all
is
listening.
something that might be involve just a change of a word or two, adding religion and national origin to the definition of what the commission will consider to be what is the name of that definition? Used to be a basis of a complaint, right? The definition of a complaint.
Where are you referring to specifically on
In
this?
section 2B, where we basically describe the protected categories that are in this ordinance. Complaint means an allegation of excessive force, sexual abuse, racial or gender discrimination, mishandling of evidence or other abusive behavior, patterns or practices by the police department or a department employee. And I'm suggesting that maybe we could possibly slip religion and national origin into in there too.
Could I suggest ethnic instead of national origin? Religion, so it would be complaint means an allegation of excessive force, sexual abuse, racial, religious, ethnic, or gender discrimination, and then etc.
Does that jive with your recommendation?
If you made that change, you wouldn't have to make any other changes anywhere else.
Right, right.
Is there anyone who is opposed to maybe that addition and change of language when it comes to that recommendation by Commissioner Williams? Are we pretty much in consensus that that's okay to add in there? Does anyone have any issues with that or the wording with it? Okay, so we can go ahead and put that in. I don't think that's a big deal at all. And I don't think it's something that we need to vote over if we're all in a general consensus like we have been for most of this ordinance. And we'll just vote fully on the overall thing to include that in with what we have going on. Is there anything else, something to that effect that you saw there you might want to tweak or anything like that before we get to a next phase of this discussion? All right, is that all we had from Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Williams to tonight's discussion with that and everything you've done? Are we good with you guys as well? If so, then I'll look for an action step on what we're doing here so we can put it into action. Yes, Commissioner Boyle.
Well, I had emailed Chris Root about this a bit, and the way I envision this, and I'm not wed to this if people have another approach, but the way I envision this is that the committee would vote on the entire report and recommendation, sending it to council, that we would also vote on the now revised draft ordinance, and we would vote on the legal memorandum. I mean, this could be one thing that lists, one motion that lists all of these things, or they could be voted on separately. But the idea is that all of those things would be forwarded to council for their consideration.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle. That's what I was waiting for, some direction on how you wanted to handle this step. Is there any other discussion to that idea? Yes, Vice Chair Root?
I think, I'm not sure whether this is a clarification or a difference. I think forwarding is the perfect verb for what the study committee should do with the memorandum from you and Eric. I think it would be a good thing if we approved the recommendations, which we have discussed at, I think, 8 meetings. So I think it would be helpful to sort of take full ownership of the recommendations. As for the part A of the report, which is the chapters and appendices, I'm open to whether we would approve or forward. They were written by 3 members of the study committee with, some input from other folks. I'm not quite sure what the best thing is for that, but if we could approve the recommendations, forward the memo, and then maybe Kathy, you've got an idea of what to do with the chapters.
Well, I mean, I thought the committee's charge was to report to council. So I think the report is part of our charge. I don't have a problem with us voting to approve the report. And I think maybe that would be an appropriate thing to do.
Okay. So we'll vote to approve the recommendations and approve the report and to forward the memo from Eric and Kathy. So why don't we do that if we do that in 3 motions, I think that would be the clearest. So we could do the 2 motions about the recommendations and memo that are in agenda item 3.1 now, when we're in 3.1. And then we could do the motion about the rest of it in 3.2 when we finish that discussion. Does that make sense? Or do you think we should do all the motions after 3.2 discussion?
Well, it might make sense to discuss everything and then have the motions, just in case there was any tweaking that happened as a result of the discussions.
Great. That's a plan.
So if I understand correctly, we're going to go into 3.2 and then we'll have our discussion, talk about everything, and then we'll make our motions. Is that what I'm hearing? Just want to make sure. So not only I understand, the community understands what we're doing here with our work that's listed here in item 3.1. Any concerns, questions in regards to us doing our process this way? All right, so what we'll do is we will still address 3.1 after our discussion at 3.2. I don't think we need to make an amendment to the agenda with that. We're just delaying the conversation on the vote. We've already made our discussion, so everything is still in alignment, and that will allow us to still stay fluid with what we have going on. And then that'll give us a little bit more time for possibly one of our commissioners who's running just a little bit late. So just want to make sure before we move on to that process, does anyone have anything else they wanted to get out there? All right, Vice Chair Root, you are up for 3.2.
Right. Chuck asked me to chair the 3.2 part of the discussion, which I'm happy to do. I provided as attachments to the agenda a memorandum that went through and said briefly what recent changes there have been in each of the 4 chapters. And then there's a table of contents. The purpose of the table of contents is so we can talk about the overall structure of what we're giving the City Council. In particular, what documents, if any, we want to give them regarding the recommendations, along with the recommendations and the legal memo. So those are the 2 sort of big picture items for this part of the agenda. So we finished the discussion about the recommendations portion. The other part of the report is the 4 chapters and related appendices. And those chapters, just as a reminder, are chapter 1 is an introduction, which Quentin was the main author of. Chapters 2 and 3 are about policing in East Lansing. Chapter 2 is a lot of data. about stops, arrests, and use of force. Chapter 3 is about the history of complaints, what they're about, and what the history has been of review of the complaints, which has been by the Human Rights Commission so far. And I was the main author of chapters 2 and 3. Chapter 4 is the national perspective. What have been the trends in oversight? What have been some experiences of difficulties, of evaluations, of different models? And Cedric was the main author of chapter 4. And then there are 15 appendices which go variously with those different chapters. All of the chapters have been reviewed before. Chapter 1 has had an addition of some updated material, mostly about the community input session at the end of March. Chapter 2, Cedric raised at our last meeting the possibility of considering whether we really wanted to have information in that chapter about the telephone survey that was done by Epic MRA, and we decided to drop the reference to that. Also, and this is new as of today, I checked in with Kelly. Hi, Kelly. She's here. About adding a footnote to chapter 2 to reference an interview she did on a podcast describing her experience being stopped by an officer of the LPD, which is right on target with the discussion in that chapter about stops. So she's willing to have that referenced in the chapter, and I would like to add that. Chapter 3, there was one addition of a paragraph about a complaint made in 2021, just recently, which is a very complex matter, but it's also very important. So we added a paragraph about that with some references for where people can get fuller information. And then in chapter 4, there is an addition about the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, NACOL, their kind of the signature characteristics that they say are important about oversight. We thought it was important to provide that. And also there's some updates about trends in oversight since George Floyd's murder a year ago. So that's the new material coming today that is reflected in the attachments of the latest versions of those chapters. So if there are questions, thoughts, or comments about any of the 4 chapters, this would be a good time, or the appendices. I have finished compiling the appendix of the weekly use of force reports from ELPD to the City Council through about a week ago. So there's about 11 and a half months of weekly reports compiled in that appendix. Obviously, that will not be news to the City Council, but it's of value to the incoming Oversight Commission, I think. So I've got that done. So we've got all the authors here if anybody has comments or questions on any of those chapters. They've been underway for many, many months, so it's not surprising that there isn't new substantive conversation. Any comments about any of these things that somebody would like to raise? Anybody? Okay. That's part A of the report. Those are the materials for what we just discussed as the third motion, where we would approve that part of the report after along with taking action on the recommendations and the legal memo. So if people are ready to do those votes, we could do them.
I just want to take a quick moment to acknowledge Commissioner Edwards' attendance for the
Great.
record.
Yes, present from East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County, virtual.
Great.
Thank you. All right, so one last chance to kind of really, and thank you, Vice Chair Root, for taking care of that. You guys see why I asked her to do that part, because she's got everything in alignment. So thank you for doing that. Any response, final responses to some of the information that she just shared with us?
Oh, I should say one more thing, Chuck. At our last meeting, I suggested that we put together some short bios as one of the appendices. And I've had a lot of email exchange with people about bios, which is just fine. The version of that document as of mid-morning is attached. Since then, some of the photos have changed. There's another sentence in one of them. It's about half photos that people have provided and about half images taken from Zoom meetings. If you would like to give me a different photo for that, that's fine. It would be great if you could do it in the next 24 hours, or let me know that it's going to be coming soon thereafter, so that I'll know when things are really done. And if there's a little tweaking to do on any of the bios, I think we can approve this with the understanding that any further changes in bios, the person about whom the bio is can, have the privilege of making a change there. Kelly?
This is just my marketing hat. I would love to encourage all of you, if you have a high-res photo to use other than a Zoom snapshot, I would really encourage you to send that in to Chris. You don't want to look back at this like 2 years from now and be like, oh my God, what was, you want to send in a really good photo.
That would be most welcome. Not every one of us has really good photos. So that's why I did make some Zoom images so that people wouldn't feel it's a high-res photo or nothing.
Well, and it doesn't have to be a headshot, professional headshot.
Yeah.
But you do want it to be something different than a screenshot.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And I do want to say, Chris, thank you for all the work that you did do on the bios, and you've put a lot of work into a lot of heavy lifting. And so I think that would be the least that we could do, is to just provide you with a photo other than a screenshot. They are grainy at best. They don't come across very good. And remember, this is a professional group, right? A professional presentation that we're going to be doing to council, that we're representing the citizens of East Lansing. And so we want to have it look, every part of it be in excellence. And so that's my encouragement for all of you.
Okay.
Yeah, Kelly, I just looked at my picture. I'm sending that right away, Chris.
Great. You do look a little bit like you have antlers in that room. So that'll be good.
I already got my glamour shots into you, so we should be good on my point front here. So
okay. Great.
All right. All right. So we can move on to, I think, now the 3 motions that I think we'll be addressing this evening, unless someone else had something else they wanted to throw in there before we got to that point. I just really want to make sure, because this is our last opportunity to kind of do this as a group, that if there's anything that's lingering, that we get it out there. And then so we can go into this thing whole after these three motions are done. And I don't see anyone who is looking like they want to do anything other than hopefully hearing a motion from one of you in regards to the recommendations first.
Okay.
Oh, wait. I'm not going to do the motions because I haven't done them for this group. So I'm waiting to hear from one of you, please. Yes, Vice Chair Root.
I move that we approve the recommended ordinances and resolution considered on March 24, 2021.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Boyle. And you're muted.
You're muted.
You said March.
I
You
meant
meant
May. Considered on May 24th. The reason for that is, and this is a way to fill Kelly in too. We added 2 words, Kelly, to section 2, which is about complaints. I'm bringing that up. Complaints means an allegation of excessive force, sexual abuse, and then we changed racial or gender discrimination to read racial, religious, ethnic, or gender discrimination. So that's the format in which we're now voting on it.
Yes, and I didn't talk with you, Diane, in advance, but I think for these significant votes, we should probably do a roll call vote just to make sure we get it on record that everyone is acknowledged and we have hopefully a unanimous situation in some of these motions. So if you don't mind, can you please get ready as we finish our discussion for the motion? Is there any more discussion in regards to the motion that's on the floor? Did you want to add something, Diane?
I just want to know how you wanted that documented in the minutes, if you just wanted to say a roll call vote was taken, or if you want everyone's name listed in the roll call.
I think we should have everyone's name listed in the roll call. I'll double check with George. Is that kind of what is normally done for the minutes?
I think you can say roll call vote, and then if they're all yays, you just write all yays, and if someone dissents, you write who dissents. But just say roll call vote, I believe, and then just denote if someone didn't vote yes, I would just write their name. You know, but if it's all yays, you just write roll call vote, all yays is what I would do. I think that's the way I would handle it. I don't recall any reason to do it differently unless Kathy could offer help on that one, but that's the way I think we would do it.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
You're going to call everybody by name for the vote, but the minutes would just reflect it that way.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So I think we'll be compliant with Robert's rules in that process. Thank you, City Manager. And so whenever you're ready, if there's no more discussion on the motion on the floor, we'll go into our roll call.
Kathy Boyle,
Yes.
Sade Colwood,
Yes.
Kelly Ellsworth Etchison,
Yes.
Chuck Krigsby,
Yes.
Cedric Haro,
Yes.
Chris Root,
Yes.
Quentin Tyler,
Yes.
Eric Williams,
Yes.
Ron Bacon. Oh, he can't vote, can he?
No.
Okay, sorry. So those are all yays.
So thank you. We'll move on to the second part of our motions, and I'll wait to hear what that motion is on the report. Vice Chair Root, please go ahead.
I move that we forward to the City Council I move that we forward to the City Council the legal memorandum dated May 20, 2021 by Kathleen Boyle and Eric Williams.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Rowe. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? All right, please go ahead, Diane.
Kathy Boyle,
Yes.
Sade Colin,
Yes.
Kelly Ellsworth Etchison,
Yes.
Cedric Harrow,
Yes.
Chuck Grigsby,
Yes.
Chris Root,
Yes.
Quentin Tyler,
Yes.
Eric Williams,
Yes.
all yeas.
Move, thank you. All right, and then we have the final motion in regards to the memo. Do you want to go ahead and follow suit, Vice Chair? Make that motion?
I move that we approve chapters 1 through 4 and related appendices of our report.
Is there a second on the floor?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison. Is there any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Callwood, did you raise your hand? Okay. No, seeing no discussion, we'll go ahead and go into the vote. Diane, please.
Kathy Boyle,
Yes.
Sade Colin,
Yes.
Kelly Ellsworth Etchison,
Yes.
Chuck Grigsby,
Yes.
Cedric Harrow,
Yes.
Chris Root,
Yes.
Quentin Tyler,
Yes.
Eric Williams,
Yes.
all yeses.
So moved. All right, yay, we got it done. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Those three motions are a big deal to a lot of what we've been doing. Congratulations to everyone on that. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that later on our agenda when it comes to that. So we'll go ahead and move on to, sorry, I got a little flustered here, to item 3.3, presentation to council. So we met as a subgroup, as you all know, in regards to kind of really thinking about how we're going to do this presentation to council, what it looked like, what we want to focus on, what we want to highlight and get across. Did Commissioner Harrow or Vice Chair Root want to speak to that at all? We do have that. Was the attachment not included? Is the attachment included on our public record? Okay, so everyone, I guess, can see that. Did you want to comment on it at all, Commissioner Harrow or Vice Chair Root? Commissioner Harrow was the one that drafted this for us, so he may be the best one to kind of just give us a highlight, even though we can read for ourselves.
So essentially, the subcommittee wanted to focus the presentation on highlighting that the most consistent NACOL recommendations in terms of maximizing effectiveness are also a lot of the things that were touched on by community members in our community meeting. And they are also things that we as a larger body have discussed fairly consistently. And just bolstering that with a few examples of how some of these oversight bodies have been effective, particularly in terms of being more proactive, right? So that policy discussion, and really getting across to council that a lot of these bodies have been fairly limited because they have not been given some of these tools that NACOL has recommended, right? So, you know, those things consistently about authority and the backing of the city, both in terms of attitude and in terms of finances and independence. And then obviously the main factor being transparency, both from the city itself and from the oversight body itself, in terms of allowing the public to see everything that is going on, right? You know, so even that example that we just had earlier of that communication from the public, that FOIA issue, right? There's a difference between saying, you know, we the city followed the law as according to FOIA versus we the city did something, even though we're not legally required to do it, in the purpose of greater transparency. And I think that's a big sticking point for a lot of people that should be emphasized to the council, which is there is this aspect of doing the bare minimum, which is very often perceived by the community as doing the bare minimum, and that's not what is meant by transparency. I haven't put together any of the slides yet, but that's just sort of the dog and pony show stuff. So if anybody has any particular recommendations on things that they would like to see on any specific slide, by all means, feel free to email me.
Thank you, Commissioner Rowe. Any reaction from anyone outside of him forwarding that information from you? Yes, City Manager Lahanas, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to say I just disagree with the city's assessment that the city does the bare minimum regarding FOIA. 260 FOIAs per year, a tremendous effort giving up FOIAs and transparency and making sure we have information out to people, a tremendous effort. Staff work on this. I'll spend a lot of time working on FOIAs. I think staff in every department could talk about this. So just because someone says they didn't get what they want, the exact way they want it, doesn't mean the city is not transparent. The record may not exist. It may not exist in the form the person wants it. There's lots of reasons that may not be the case, but I would encourage people to go back and look at our FOIA logs and look at about 260 FOIAs per year and the wealth of information that the city provides to people. Because someone asks for something doesn't mean the city, and it doesn't exist, we don't have it, it can't be given, doesn't mean the city lacks transparency. So I would defend that process completely. And there's many, many FOIAs from that organization, and most of them are given just as is. And if there's not something existing, people think there's something going on or a conspiracy. It's not the case. So I would say that's not the case at all. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Yes, Commissioner Rowe, please go ahead.
We don't have to spend an hour going back and forth over this point, right? But my point was not about a lack of transparency. It was about the fact that the community perceives that there is a lack of transparency because of the way that things are done, right? That's a process argument. We could talk till the cows come home about everything that we've done that indicates transparency, but there is clearly the perception amongst the community that that can be improved, right? If you want to sit here and talk, sure, it doesn't exist, or there are any number of reasons that information might not come out. But when somebody asks you for something and you say, we don't have that information, and then it turns out that you had that information a week before you were asked for that information, that's going to be perceived as a significant problem.
Thank you, Commissioner Rowe. I appreciate your input and also drafting this up for us for our presentation. Does anyone else want to respond to what we have so far in our presentation that we're going to be giving? And it's looking like we may be able to do this on the 8th unless something changes from that time frame. But I think we're shooting for the 8th of June to present to council. And right now, Vice Chair Root, Commissioner Williams, and obviously Commissioner Rowe and myself are going to be involved with that presentation. So any input, anything that maybe you've thought about in the time in between in regards to that, please let us know ASAP so we can appreciate that and have that be reflected in our presentation, because that's going to be our final opportunity to really get across a lot of the good work that we've been doing and why we've been doing it for the outcomes that we expect going forward. And hopefully that council will adopt and implement when it comes to the decisions on the ordinance. So I'll just leave it there for a quick second to see if anyone else had any more comments. Yes, Commissioner Williams.
When is that?
When is the presentation? I believe we're looking for the 8th of June. We got a email from the mayor just before this meeting, and he was hoping, because it is going to be a big process for them based on what he's saying, and there's gonna be a lot of discussion. So we're shooting for the 8th for our original presentation, I believe, and discussion. And then we may come back and participate going forward, but I just know that's going to be the original time frame, unless somehow we hear back from the city manager about the agenda being too full, and we have a backup plan for the 15th of June. Was it the 12th? I think it's the 15th of June to do that presentation if need be. Was it the 15th or 12th? I just want to make sure I say that right.
Yeah, those are the two dates. You're right, Chair. It's either the 8th or the 15th. There's a meeting on the 22nd, so there's 3 meetings in a row. But obviously, the mayor said he wants to get it sooner than later. But you have 3 dates in a row there through June.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Clarification? Yes, Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison, please go ahead.
I have a question regarding number 4 on this item under the ordinance. There's so under the major points, item A, where it says, where did study committee members disagree? And so if someone can just kind of give me a little bit of perspective on what your thoughts were on that item.
Commissioner Rowe, please go ahead.
I think that was just to sort of inform City Council about where some of the potential stumbling blocks were with respect to, conversations that we might have had about, for example, whether we should ask for the moon and go after full subpoena power versus, deciding that there are some things that we might not going to get, and so it's not worth asking those things. City Council had mentioned maybe in a City Council meeting or in an individual email that they just wanted to know what were some of those, bigger discussions that we had as a study committee where we didn't necessarily all agree with one another about how to move forward in specific details of the ordinance.
Are you guys going to discuss as part of the disagreement qualified immunity?
My assumption was that would be one of those topics of discussion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair, thank you, Commissioner Rowe. Vice Chair Root, please go ahead.
I think the thrust of Section 4 is focusing on the specifics of the recommendations that we have agreed on and that we hope that they will use as the basis for their decision-making on creating an oversight commission. Cedric mentioned that there had been, that somebody brought to our attention the idea of that the council might like to hear about disagreements. I think I'm aware of that discussion, and I think it happened because of the discussion at our last meeting about the information access issues, which is now a topic that has been resolved by Eric and Kathy, which we talked about before you got to the meeting. So I think our main goal is to give as much clarity as we can to members of council about what we've agreed on.
Well, and that's what I expected, but when I saw this on here where it starts to get into where there was disagreement, I wasn't sure the point of that and why that was even listed. I
agree with you.
Or even the
yeah, I'm sorry. Were you done, Commissioner Ellsworth? I'm sorry.
Yeah, my final thought was, or even the purpose of that. For if the purpose of meeting with City Council is to present the presentation, the proposal, I didn't understand what the point of discussing where there might have been sticking points. So I wasn't understanding that, and there wasn't really anything that gave me any perspective. So that's why I asked that question.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sorry, Commissioner Boyle, please go ahead. Thanks for waiting.
I would have said, I mean, this is just an outline. I would have said lively discussions instead of disagreement, where we disagreed. I think that there was a good exchange of view on several topics where we started out with differing approaches to a problem. But I think our final product is, well, it's certainly been passed unanimously. So as I would say that the study committee had some lively discussions, but we have come up with a recommendation that we all stand behind. And I think that's what we want to express to council.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle. Commissioner Williams, please go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I don't remember looking back any disagreements among members of the commission. Nothing stands out. What I remember the disagreement between people was when we were working on that legal memorandum, and the city attorneys had different views, and but that wasn't a disagreement between committee members. It was a disagreement between committee members and the city attorneys.
Perhaps disagreement was too strong a word.
You asked Commissioner Harrell if there was anything there. They found it, and so I think we addressed it. And I think we're good. I think lively discussion is works. That's okay with everyone else as far as how we'll present that to the council and to the community overall. And you're right, we are at a unanimous situation, so that would be unfortunate for that to be something that was used in that way as far as that word.
Probably the liveliest discussion was during that public comment session that we had. And there were things in the public comments, there were people who were asking us to do that we didn't do because we're too conservative.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams.
That was lively. Mhm.
Ouch. All right. Anything else in regards to item 3.3 and us going forward?
Here, here, Eric, I drink to that.
And Commissioner Rowe did, if I'd like to remind you that if you do have something you want to submit to him, he is willing and waiting to hear from you. Please try to get it to him sooner than later as we get closer to our deadlines. In that presentation, Vice Chair Root and Commissioner Williams and Commissioner Rowe have a heavy lift in doing that presentation. I got a small little part, but they will appreciate information sooner than later from you. So thank you. If not, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. All right. So we don't have any new business, and we get down to line item 5, commissioner announcements. And I'll open the floor up to anyone who may want to make an announcement or comment. Yes, Commissioner Boyle.
Well, I just want to say I really appreciate working with all of you, including committee members and staff members. I came in here midstream. A lot of work had already been done before I arrived, but it was arranged and presented in such a manner that it was really easy for me to get up and running on the issues and to start working with the committee. So I really appreciate everybody's hard work. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Yes, City Manager Johannes, go ahead.
I was going to wait till commissioners got to speak, but I'll just say the same and say thank you to this commission for all your work. It's been a tremendous amount. I know that in my whole history of 20 years, I've probably seen only a couple of commissions that have had to do this much actual work of doing the work and not just making recommendations. So kudos to you guys. The financial health team was one. The review of the new planning changes with form-based code is another. And this has been probably one of the heaviest lifts I've seen from a group of citizens. So tremendous work by all of you. Thanks to the staff support, to Justin in the background helping to run Zoom, and Diane being staff support. Appreciate their efforts, but thank you all, and to you, Chair, and our Vice Chair as well for your efforts.
Thank you, City Manager Johannes. Anyone else have anything they want to add to the discussion this evening for this section there?
I mean, I could
All
add
right.
something, but it'll be redundant. Just again, thanking this group for, I came on here only, I think, knowing Noel and as far as from the commission side. And so I appreciate getting to know you guys and working through a very, very tough assignment that we were tasked with. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ellsworth. I just said there's nothing redundant about acknowledgement of what is happening here with this commission. Anyone else? Because I do have just a quick thing that I wanted to say. And you guys know me, I'm a little bit long-winded, so I just want to make sure once I say it, we're done and we're good to go. We can move on. All right. Obviously, I just want to thank everyone for the participation. As some of the other commissioners have said, and the city manager, this has been a tremendous high-level commission. I've learned so much from each and every one of you in regards to this work, and I've definitely leveled up as a person in the community when it comes to being able to work with others, on tough, complex issues. It's just been tremendous amount of work that I've seen a lot of you do that is very, very humbling. You spent your free hours of your time when no one was looking to get it right. And I think, without your participation, we wouldn't be where we're at. And I just really am thankful for your participation. Everyone. I just want to say this real briefly. And I wrote this 4 or 5 times and I just threw it away and I wrote it again, but so please forgive me if it's a little bit rough. But this week, 1 year ago, the murder of George Floyd changed the world. He cried out to the world, "I can't breathe," 28 times until his death. That resulted in demonstrations around the world, along with massive collective consciousness that gave us record numbers of voter registration, millions and millions of dollars to community advocacy groups, and unprecedented demands of our leaders and politicians to fight for us and fight for reforms in police and ultimately our entire justice system. Here in East Lansing, 1 day after his death, George Floyd's death, our city council adopted the resolution for the study committee. Roughly about 8 months later, we were ready to move forward with our recommendations. And this is one of many, many key steps that will represent community policing in our community that we call home for all of our citizens that make us in East Lansing. And I'll leave it there. And I just, again, this is a big, big, big deal to each and every one of you being a part of this group. As the city manager, there's not very many opportunities that we get a chance to really step up for our community on a local and national effort. And I think the work and the recommendations that ultimately will be in an ordinance format for the community and oversight for the city of East Lansing will be a template for a lot of municipalities around the country and how we got it right. We still have work to do many areas of criminal justice reform, community safety, community policing, public safety, whatever you want to call it. We still got a lot of work to do, but I believe this is one key major step that we can be very, very proud of and be a part of as we see this thing go forward to council and council gets this thing out and rolling. And we have a representative commission and a body for this. So I just want to say, I'm just humbled to be a part of the work that has been done over the last 8 months. And I'll leave it at that. All right, so I know I said I wanted to be last. Did anyone else want to say anything else before we go off into the next part of the agenda? Yes, Councilmember Bacon, please go ahead.
Yeah, and just one last thing for all you guys. I consider this moment, I'm really proud. I spoke with media outlets today and just my pride in this commission. But I would say we treat this moment a lot like voting. From this moment forward, this is going to be the rule. And we just need you to stay engaged and hold us accountable moving forward. I think that's the key. And I know many of you do already. It's part of your DNA. But I really I think this is important that you guys help us to carry this forward and continue to hold us accountable if it's moving in ways, and hopefully many of you participate on the seated board moving forward if you see fit. But that's just the goal. Just continue to hold us accountable, bring this thing to life. We want it to be a living document and a way of life for East Lansing, and we'll be looking for your support on that part of it to really bring it to life. And I also want to thank Chief Kim and Deputy Chief Gonzalez for participating and putting in a lot of man hours as well. And we just hope, through your officers and leadership, we'll bring this to life. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bacon. Anyone else? All right. I just thought for sure Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison was going to give us something to work with before we got out of here, but I'll leave her alone if she doesn't have anything to say and move on to item 6. Last chance.
Other than it was a joy working with all of you.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right. All right. No worries. All right. I'll move to item number 6 and I'll look for a motion for us to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Ellsworth Etchison. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Tyler. Any discussion on our adjournment? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right. Thank you so much. We are moved and we are adjourned. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Right, thank you.
Good working with you all.
Good night, guys.
Night.